former basketball legend, Rucker legend.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he played with like Joe Hammond. I don't know if you know who Joe Hammond is. He played with Joe Hammond, all those legends, and he was getting 50 points a game.
Wow.
Every game.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. But he got a couple of times, which is a big deal. 50 is not easy.
Big deal.
Got to be good to get 50.
Oh yeah. No, basketball's one of my favorite sports. So yeah, no, I know 50 don't come easy.
Even if you play on the monkey bars, if you get 50, you still doing good. Well, he laughed at that. He laughed because I started on the monkey bars, so he always laughed at my monkey bar stories. I grew up in Grand House. I don't know if you know that.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Rick Young, another segment of What's in Your Hand. I have a very, very special guest today. I'm super, super excited. We'll bring some very powerful information. There's a quote that says, "There's nothing, this is an idea whose time has come. And the time has come for us to get this information that we need to improve our communities." And I want to welcome the Director of Organizing for Facing New York, Marilyn Joseph. Hey, Marilyn, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wow, that's wonderful. So let me just be honest. I'm going to be real. I'm going to start off being very honest. Very important to be honest. I'm not going to sit up here like I'm some expert when it comes to the political arena. I say I'm on the kindergarten level. I'm just going to be honest. And now, I was one of those guys that, I'm not into politics. Not important. I don't need that. I think I'm starting to find it a little different. It is important. And can you tell us why being involved in politics is important? Why is it important?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The interesting part of what you just said is that you're not alone. So hopefully today we're going to share some information that's going to be helpful to a lot of folks out there, because again, we've seen things in the news and we've seen things historically that may have us turned away from politics, but politics regulates everything we do, right? So the minute you go outside, right, in terms of your traffic lights or the sanitation that's in your, or the lack thereof of the collection of that sanitation, all of that is affected by who we have in either local, state, or federal government, right? So again, it affects everything we do as we kind of live and breathe, even when it comes down to the environment. And so one good way for us to, just exercise the opportunities to have our voice into that mix is by voting. So I want to talk to you about that today.
So I texted a few people because someone had sent me a video that was kind of raw. I'm not going to get into the video, but it was kind of raw. And so I was like, whoa, this is serious business. This thing coming up this coming Tuesday is serious. So I texted a couple of people and said, hey, how you feel about this upcoming election? And the people that I text, was only a few, they were not engaged. Not engaged. Family members and friends, they were like not engaged. I was like, whoa. And after seeing this video, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This is serious. What's happening? So
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, let me find how did you get involved in politics?
Oh, that's a long story, Rick. But
that's a movie.
It's a movie. It's a movie because I've been on this earth a few decades now. But one of the things I would say in terms of my earliest of recollections around this is that, growing up in Harlem, I remember Harlem in terms of the time that I was growing up. And even today, there's still some evidence of it. But at that time, I saw Harlem in what I would call gray, right? The color gray, right? It wasn't full of color for me, right? My building was the only tenement building that was that had residents on the block, right? The other 5 buildings were burnt out. People were, shooting up drugs, prostitution, all of the things that you could think of. My earliest recollections in terms of having a tricycle was riding it up and down my hallway, right? I never got to ride it outside because it was just too much going on, right, in the community, right? And so I always remember being a little angered by that, but not knowing why, right? I would see, and I'm going to really date myself, right? I would see, the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch and all these folks riding their bike and everything was hunky-dory. Everything was good in their community, right? But I was like good times all day, right? It was like that kind of a thing where we were always somehow in a struggle, right? And in a fight. And I remember being really challenged by that. And, seeing my parents, my dad was a postman, mail. He did some stuff for the post office. My mom was an immigrant that came to the United States. I lost my dad at an early age, and my mom not really mastering systems. I became really parentified early, right? And so again, had the opportunity to see systems and how systems were failing us as Black and brown people, gave me like this urge to say that something was wrong with this, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Fast tracking that, got involved with hearing someone else running for a campaign, a mentor of mine, C. Virginia Fields. She was running for city council, and I heard what she was saying, and it sounded really great. I said, oh, yeah, you know what? I want to get involved in that. So became a volunteer on her campaign, and the rest was kind of history. I became a district leader in the Harlem community, wound up working for the council member at the time. And so always kind of stayed in tune with what was happening politically in my community. So it's always been like in my, DNA to kind of know what's going on in the community, fight for what's right, down to like making sure the heat was on, right, in the heating season, and up to, anything that had anything to do with crime and some of the things that we see around gun violence in our community. Those things are really near and dear to me. And so that's part of the story in terms of, just this urgency for me. And it still lives, right, as we see all that's happening today with young people, unfortunately, being killed, and the need for restorative justice, right, in our community. And so, again, the urgency is still there, and I'm looking forward to continuing to make change, hopefully, in the community.
Well, let me just tell you, I love C. Virginia Fields. I 3.5 years I worked in the state building as a security officer, and she was there during that time. She came after wait a minute. She came after
Clark.
Hilton.
There was Hilton Clark was
Gloria Daniels. What's her name? Daniels.
Yes, we had an Assembly member Daniels. Yes, I can't remember her first name right now. She was the Assembly member, and then you had C. Virginia Fields, who came in as the council member. Yeah. She then went on to be the second woman of color to be the Manhattan Borough president. Right. Thereafter.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, when we got up, she helped us WACR get their funding.
Okay.
And I wasn't there at the meeting, but they told me that she said, listen, y'all, you got to do like Rick Young said, you got to use what's in your hand. I was like, what? Wow. I was so happy that she said that. Yeah. Powerful. And I got that from our brother, Reverend Dr. Adam Clayton Powell Jr.
Absolutely.
Give that famous speech, what's in your hand.
What's in your hand. That's right. That's right. And that's what we got to think about right now. What's in our hand, right? We have the opportunity to think about so many different levels, Rick, in terms of our midterm elections, right? We can go into vote where we can look at our U.S. Senator, who we want to see in that position, our House and the representatives there, so our Congress people, who are they? On a New York State level, we are looking at our state senators, our state assembly members, and then we get the opportunity to even think about who we see in the New York State Supreme Court, right, and civil court and other such roles. And last but certainly not least, this year is very, very interesting because we have some ballot proposals that are coming up. So there are 3 questions that have things to do with racial justice. And so we get the opportunity to answer those 3 questions. And so the 3 of them have to do with, one, the statement of values. And so thinking about what happens in terms of the city's preamble, having a statement of values related to racial justice, thinking about the opening of a racial justice office within city government. And so the planning that it has to take to do that, and creating a commission that will have support of that in terms of racial equity in our community. And last but not least, I don't know about you, but I need to measure the true cost of living, right, in New York City, right? We see that there, unlike some other cities across the country, that it's incredibly expensive, right, to live and exist in New York City. So for each one of those questions, whether it's the statement of values, building out a racial equity office, and the true measure of the cost of living, you get to answer yes or no on the ballot. And so we are encouraging people to, flip the ballot, right? So literally, you're going to have your candidates on one side. You get to pick your candidates of your choice. And then we say, flip the ballot where you have these 3 questions, and you can answer yes or no to those questions. Or proposals. Sometimes I call proposals. Actually, that's what the terminology will be when you see it on the actual ballot.
Okay. Now, how will people find their polling site?
Okay. So finding your polling site, that's a really good question, Rick, because right now, actually, we are knee deep in early voting, right? So early voting started back on October 29th. It will go on till November 6th. And so if you decide that you want to kind of go out and do your voting early, which we encourage people to do, early voting, you can go to nycvotes.org. So again, nycvotes.org. And if you go to that site, you can easily put in your address, and it will show you where your polling site is. I bring this up too because many people, you vote over the years and you're like, oh, I know where I vote. I always go over to the school over there, right? I'll go over to the church over there. And I bring this up because I encourage you to do due diligence and actually look up your polling site before you go and vote, because your early voting site may differ from your actual voting site on election day. So election day, it's one place, early voting is another. And so again, by going to nyc.votes, you'll be able to find out exactly where you need to go. That's a one-stop shop, Rick. And so not only can you find out your polling site, you can also see the candidates, right? So all the roles that I talked about a moment ago, you can actually see them laid out for you in each role, whether it's the U.S. Senator or whether it's a New York State Senator. You get to see who's running in that seat based on your address, and you get to get a little blurb about what they do, because that's another thing too. We have all of these titles, right? You have congressman, a U.S. Senator, a state senator, and like, what does all of that mean? Right. And so again, you have a one-stop shop at nycvotes.org, and that is an opportunity to meet your candidates. It's an opportunity to find your polling site. It's an opportunity to see the proposals that I was just talking about. You can get to look at that in more detail and be an informed voter when you go to the polls.
I heard someone come who said to me they don't know who to vote for. They haven't been paying attention, so they don't even know who to vote for. What about the things like that?
Yeah, so I would say that's the time to do some of the research, right? Here at Faith in New York, we come in a nonpartisan way, so we're not taking, any position or endorsements. But that's why that site is helpful, because it will give you who the folks that are running, and then you get an opportunity to read up a little bit about them. We have something called the World Wide Web these days, right? And so Google them, right? Like look them up so you can understand some of the stance that they're taking. I would also encourage you to look at local news and media as well, because right now it's very prevalent, that they're talking about what the candidates are doing, and you get a little blurb of who they are and what they might be bringing to the table. So those are just some strategies in terms of thinking about where you want to land your vote. And also going back to that site for a moment, you can even plan out or make your voting plan, meaning that you can look at what the different roles are. You can start to make your decisions and have that in your mind so you're not startled, right, when you go into the polling site or feeling fearful because you don't know what to do. Again, you'll get to see the opportunities there. And another resource is that if you go to NYC Board of Elections, they actually have a sample ballot there. So same thing applies. You put in your address, because by address, it looks different, right? All ballots are not going to look the same because you have different people running in different districts, right? So you put your exact address in, it shows you who's running in that particular area. And then again, it gives you an opportunity to see a sample ballot so you can start to visualize and make your plan as you go into vote.
So what do they need to take with them? What do they need to take when they go there to vote? What do they need? ID? What do they need?
Yeah, a piece of ID is always helpful. In New York, you don't see it as much, in other states, there's a lot in terms of just what's asked, and what should be asked of you, if at all, is the ID. They're going to ask what's your last name. They're going to look up your information in a poll book, or now I think they have tablets. They've kind of, upgraded it with technology, and they should be able to find your name there. If for any reason someone is not able to find your name, you should not walk away from the polling site. If you know that this is the place that you're supposed to vote, you should ask for a paper ballot. And a paper ballot gives you the opportunity to have on paper the same information in terms of who the candidates are, and you can cast your vote that way, right? So again, we don't want people to be intimidated. There should be no voter intimidation, at any sites. You should always ask again for a paper ballot or ask to speak to the chairperson if someone is denying you access to vote, because you should in fact have the access to vote. And a simple ID is, pretty much all you need. And again, it's not always required. Maybe for newer voters, sometimes it's asked, but it's not a regular occurrence that you would see that. And if anyone is having any challenges, one of the things I also like to offer up is that there are election lawyers that are working today and all the way through election day. And they're around for, again, anything that looks intimidating or feels intimidating to you. And if you feel like it's not resolved, you can call right while you're at the polling site. That number is 1-866-OUR-VOTE or 1-866, and the number is 687-8683. And again, these are lawyers that are in place and designed to help denounce or at least give you the right information if you're feeling intimidated at the site. Intimidation can look a lot of different ways for many people, right? So if you're being questioned about, who you are, more than just asking for the ID, you want to speak to the chairperson or poll worker. If you're being denied a paper ballot, right, you want to be, again, directed to who the chairperson may be at the site to get it resolved. Again, if you feel like it's not resolved, you use this number. You shouldn't be questioned if you don't speak English very well, right? So someone can say, oh, you don't know what we're talking about. You can't do this. No one should be saying that. No poll worker should be saying that to you. Stranger things happen, right? So again, if anything is happening to you, and they do have language accessibility and language justice. And what I mean by that is that there are lawyers in various languages. And so not just in English, but in Spanish, Arabic, etc., to offer support.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So is it important for young people to be engaged in this political climate right now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything that I've studied, is that when there was a revolution or anything around social justice, who led it? Young people, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe you're not, there might be somebody listening in today, they're not 18 yet, but they're 16 or 17 years of age. I would encourage them to pre-register. Right. And so the same site that I made earlier, the same one that I gave you earlier, nycvotes.org, you can pre-register. So here in New York State, 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register. And then what will happen is that they will get a notification. And when they turn 18, they'll be able to cast their vote. Right. So for those, again, that are listening that are of that age, 16 or 17, pre-register now. If you're, maybe a grandparent and it's your grandbabies, let your grandbabies know, right, that this is the time to, again, pre-register. The other thing is that we want to get civically engaged, right? We want to make sure that we know and we're not getting to an older age and going, well, what's that whole thing about with voting? So again, we do encourage our young people to have the opportunity to vote. I hear my daughter coming in as we speak, she went with me on my hip the first time that I had the opportunity, at 5 or 6 months when we first voted for President Obama, former President Obama. She was right there on my hip. And that was instinctively put into me, right? The power of voting and how important it is. As I mentioned earlier, my mom was an immigrant, but when she had the opportunity to become naturalized, she did. And she went regularly to go vote. And so that was instilled in me. And I hope that I've instilled that in her. And I encourage everyone who's in our listening audience to do the same.
Okay. Now, you said something very important. You said people sacrificed for us to be able to vote.
Absolutely.
And you have some people that are not taking advantage of that. They don't understand the importance of it. They figure my vote is not going to make a difference. Can you speak to that? Your vote making a difference?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are, again, we can do our research, but again, there's been so many folks that have fought and died. And I think about the late Representative John Lewis, right, getting into good trouble, right, for the opportunity for you and I to vote, right? And so someone shunning that away and saying, oh, well, that didn't mean anything. What, a way to dishonor his legacy, right? And the legacy of so many other nameless faceless folks that have endured so much to, again, get the power of voting. We see voter suppression still existing in many states where people are being, questioned or, again, taken off of lines and all kind of things that are happening. Why allow that to happen, and why give someone else the power to have a voice for you, right? So when we don't speak, right, when we don't vote, we're losing or lessening our voice, right? And that lessens our power in the community. And so, what I say to that is that we don't want to lose that power. And so we should use our vote and exercise that vote. And not only that, once we have voted for various candidates, that we challenge them, right? That we make sure that our streets are clean, that our streets are safe, that if we want to see certain dollars come into our community, that we advocate in that way. And that it starts at a very, very local level, joining your PTA and being part of your Parent Teachers Association, being part of the community board, right? Being a district leader. All of these things are ways that you can be civically engaged. And if you don't want to do all of that, again, when it's voting time, exercise that right to vote. Think about ways to create a voting plan, meaning, there might be elders in your community that might need someone to help them walk over to the voting site. Go in a group, right? Checking in on your friends and making sure that they're voting. Someone just called me, a good friend of mine just texted me earlier today, and she was like asking me about her son. Her son just went to his first year in college out of the state. And so, we're really proud of him. He's a freshman, but he wants to vote, right? So now what does he do, right? So how do we make sure that we get him that absentee ballot, right? So that he can mail in his vote. So keeping each other informed is important, right? Getting the answers where needed. And if you don't remember anything I said today, that nycvotes.org is a one-stop shop for everything that you may need, including an absentee ballot, on how that process, plays out. And so I encourage you to, again, stay educated. If you don't know, there's probably someone in your circle that will know and can redirect you to, ways that you may vote. And if not, you can always, hit us up at Faith in New York. We will be glad to come into your space and share the information that we have with your community.
Now, how is voting or these politics, how's it going to have an impact on our community economics?
How does it have how does it have an impact on the community's economics, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it could be a number of different ways. So this is why you have to pay attention to who your elected officials are, right? Because it starts off with even something as simple as discretionary dollars. Each elected official has discretionary dollars that they can allocate to certain things within the community. You want to make sure that you're participating at every level of what's happening there. They tend to do town halls and other ways of kind of gathering information from their constituents. Again, those rooms, sometimes you could pick a seat, right? Because they're so empty. No, we need to go to those meetings, right? So that we could understand, what's happening there. There are certain requests that are made, from various groups of interest. So it might be something around the environment, or it could be something around education. Again, this is why it's important to go to those different meetings so you can understand what they're asking for as elected officials. And if we feel like, well, that's not enough, or if we need to challenge it, that we can. And we do have the right to do that, right? And as I was mentioning before, community boards have an incredible amount of power, right? And so they vote on things around affordable housing, in our community, the building of new businesses, whether or not we have 25 liquor stores or one on our block, right? And so guess who sits in those seats? It's people like you and I, right? So run for being a community board member. You fill out an application, and again, you will have that kind of power to impact what happens economically within our community.
How do you find out what community board you're in, and how do you find out who your representatives are?
Yeah. So if you go to the Board of Elections site that I was mentioning earlier, that's one. That one is a little bit different. Vote.nyc. You can go there. You can find who your elected officials are, again, based on your address. On city government, you can always dial 311 or go to nyc.gov if you're looking at who your electeds may be in your local community. And again, we're always here too. So at Faith in New York, if you're stuck, we can help you out with that as well. All right.
Okay.
But there are a lot of city resources. Again, we are in a, blessed state where you don't have to kind of find it in a telephone book anymore, or, go through a number of different resource guides, but you can get it at the click of a button. So vote.nyc is one, or NewYorkCityVotes.org is the second. And you can get who your elected officials are on a city level, on a state level, and a federal level.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And what about healthcare?
What about healthcare? What about it?
How does voting?
How does voting?
Get your elected officials in there.
So many different ways. Yeah. So many different ways. What comes to mind when you mention this is the census, right? And how important the census is, right? The census is where we count how many people are in the community. And again, people got the mailer and they're like, I'm not going to answer that, right? And the ripple effects of that is that's how money is allocated to helping hospitals, right? And the supports that are needed in the community. And we saw the horrific news, right? When we think about, what was it? It was in Elmhurst, Queens, where during the COVID season, people were literally dying, right? Because there weren't enough beds. Why? Because the community was undercounted, right? And so that's where we play a role, right? We play a role in terms of how health facilities are getting the dollars by saying, hey, I'm here, right? I'm here, recognize me, count me, right? So that when they are starting to allocate dollars, they're allocating it on the population, right? So if you're not counted, guess what? The resources ain't there, right? And if they're not there, we see ripple effects like the example I was given during the beginning of COVID, where we saw so many people pass away because there weren't the resources, there weren't the beds. The beds were not there, right, and available to them. And again, that was a direct correlation to how the community was undercounted in terms of who was there.
How about a person not voting? How does that affect policing in our community?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, when you don't vote, it's like losing your voice, right? So you don't have the opportunity to speak up, right? And so again, this is where voting becomes, very, very important. Our commissioners are chosen by the people that we vote for, right? So we saw just quite recently in the last election with our new mayor that he was able to pull in a commissioner and other folks of leadership. That's done through what we had to vote for that mayor, right? In order for that to happen. So again, that's how that directly kind of correlates what happens in terms of who you might see in leadership. Same way as I was mentioning with the community boards, there are police councils as well. And so this is another way that we average residents in the community can make a change by joining our precinct council, right? And at your precinct council, that's a place where you can say, hey, wait, we're worried about what's happening in policing here, or we want to see something else in our community. So if you want to see change, you got to be about the change, right? And so not only voting, but again, participating at various levels of government. And again, there are many places that we as residents can impact the change that we want to see.
Okay. So I did this exercise program where I started exercising. I do this just a little bit, not a lot, but I've been doing it now. Today, I haven't done it yet. Today, I'm going to do it when I finish. It's going to be my 97th day in a row. I'm just get down and do some push-ups, right? But I started small. So taking small steps, I understand that it really works. I mean, 97 days. Just the consistency, right?
Wow.
So how could someone, what's the baby step that someone, baby step, oh wow, baby college, baby step. What's the baby step that someone could take to start being more engaged and participating? I mean, other than, I know hopefully they'll vote on Tuesday, but what else can they do? If they want to really find out and find out about their resources that's available to them?
Yeah, I would say start looking at places that are of interest to you, right? Again, there's so many ways that you can be involved in city government. You asked me about some of them, right? So it could be around safety in the community. And so you want to get more involved there. Again, we were mentioning the police precinct. It could be about safety in terms of beautification in our community. So it might be within our parks department. So the nyc.gov site is a good site when you're thinking about like the overall services. And I would say start with what you're passionate about, right? Like, you can't conquer the world in a day, right? Like, but think about what you're passionate about, right? And I was mentioning to you when I was sharing my story a little bit that this whole idea of restorative justice and making sure that we are healing as a community. We're seeing, unfortunately, so much gun violence. We want to tap into our faith leaders. I happen to be in a faith organization. Part of why I'm here is because I want to see our faith leaders continue to be healers and really step out of the four walls of their churches or their mosque or whatever and come out into our community. And so that's a big issue for me. So safety is one for me. What is it for you? Right. So again, it could be things around health and wellness. And so how you may be connecting to the New York City parks, right? And parks departments to make sure that their dollars to have the right equipment. Ricky, as you talked about, working out, you want to go into a gym and the gym looks like any other gym, right? Not that, you go in certain neighborhoods and things are torn up and broken down while other ones are nice and shiny and got the best of the best, right? And so again, figure out what your passion is. Maybe young people, right? So step into the space of looking at what's happening through the Board of Education. And again, you can go to their website. They have a community division, or if you're a parent, you can become, involved in your child's school. So again, think about what it is that you're passionate about, and then start to do your research in terms of how does that relate to the city? What city entity manages that, right? So that you can think about a way that you may take a stand on making a difference in that particular sphere of work.
Wow. Okay, so we pretty much at the end. But I'm going to tell you.
Oh, already?
It's quick, right?
I could talk about elections and voting and that power all day. Yes.
Yeah. But I just want to let you know what I'm passionate about, and I don't know if there's a space for that. But I'm interested in positive, motivational success principles. That's it. Positivity, motivation, talking about achieving success. So, is there any venue for that?
I think it would be in the health space, right? Because as we think about health, and as I think about the prior administration, they did a lot around mental health in particular. And we just came out of, and I shouldn't even say came out of, because we're still in the midst and seeing some of the ripple effects of this pandemic. And so this whole idea of positivity and mental health is key, right? And so I would say, think about what is going on at the various health centers in the community, health facilities, and what they're inspiring and doing there. But even, again, I think you asked me the question about like, what do we do as an individual, right? Think about your mental health as important as you think about any other part of health, right? Sometimes in our communities, and when I say our, I'm thinking about Black and Brown communities, mental health is not the top of your list, right? So it's just like, I got to grind and let me just make that money and let me just do what I got to do and everything else will fall into place, right? Mentally, you got to be ready for all of that, right? So you got to get your sleep, right? You got to think about your ways to, and your mantra around how is it that you're going to go to and through living through a city like New York, right? Where everything could hit you at different places. And so if it's, meditating or breathing or, exercising, or a combination of all the three, right? Think about what it is that makes you mentally stable and set so that you can do all the other things that we were talking about. You can't do all of that if you're not thinking about yourself. And so, when you go on a plane, they say, put the mask on yourself first, right? You might be you and your baby and you think, oh, let me run to the baby, right? You're running the baby. Meanwhile, you're going and the baby don't have nobody, right? You got to put it on yourself, right? Like, how do we think about ourselves? And sometimes we put ourselves last. And so how do we put ourselves first so that we can then bring everybody else with us, right? So, yeah.
Now, if someone comes out of prison, are they allowed to vote?
Okay. So that's a really good question, because there's a lot of myths around this one, right? So yeah, there is an executive order which restores voting rights, right? So once someone is formally incarcerated, so they can't do it while in while being incarcerated, but once they have fulfilled that part of their work and are what I would call a returning citizen, you do in fact have the right to vote. So that has been
Even
restored,
if
and
they're
that
on
was
parole?
after they completed their parole. And so
Okay.
the simple line to that is, if you're not incarcerated, you do have the right to register and vote. And so what I do is encourage people, once they've gone through their formal incarceration, that they do in fact go and register.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
that's important because, again, a lot of times people, and it was actually true until, again, there was a restoration that was done by executive order 2021, right? That many people were under the belief like, oh man, I can't vote, right? I got a record, I got a little thing. No, once you've completed that, you are able to vote and should exercise your right to vote. Because that also impacts, right? You talked about like how do things impact things, right? You want right now there's a large fight around this in terms of thinking about many of our brothers and sisters that are like upstate in different places and how they're being counted as residents in those places. Meanwhile, they live in places like where I live in Harlem and Bed-Stuy and other places, and we're not getting those resources because the resources are going where they are, which is someplace else, right? But when they come back home, the money's not here, right? The resources are not here, right? Because the resources have been allocated somewhere else. So that's another fight, right? That's another whole conversation that we can have another day. But again, this is where voting and fighting legislation becomes, and being, again, civically minded becomes really, really important so that we know what our rights are and that we're, again, executing on those by speaking up. If that's letter writing, right? Like letter writing ain't go away, right? Just because we got these computers and stuff, letter writing and going to your elected official's office, very important. Doing rallies, letting them know how your community is feeling, very, very important. And so again, we encourage everyone in the listening audience to get in the fight. It's a good fight. It's good trouble. And let's do it together.
Right. And how important is it to vote? How is that going to have an impact on our schools?
Same thing as we were saying with the hospitals, right? So this is how, resources are allocated. So we want to make sure we have a chancellor and other folks that are moving with our best interest. And that particular position in New York City is deemed by the mayor, right? And so we want to pay attention from the top and all the way down, right? So it starts with the mayor, right? So we want to make sure that we're voting for a mayor that will support the best efforts. We want to make sure that we're constantly talking to our chancellor, who is appointed by the mayor, right? So that we are making sure that all of our districts have some level of equity, right? And that they look the same. And when we don't see that, that we are then going to our school board meetings or to our district offices and letting them know around what we're dismayed about or what we'd like to see in terms of equity in our schools. But again, it's about your voice and elevating your voice and then getting others, right? Building power with like-minded people so that you're not just standing out there rallying by yourself, right? But that you got other folks and you can say, hey, I'm here with 20 other parents and we all feel the same way. Or here's a stack of petitions and letters from the community, right? We want to make sure that, every child has an opportunity to have a school like XYZ school, right? And that's a big deal because in many boroughs, we see that there's some schools that look quite different, right, than other schools, right? And so again, it's about, but what I would say about that too, and the difference is you would see that there's a very, very active parental involvement in those schools and schools that may be deemed better, right, than others, right? When the voices are muted and nobody's complaining, status quo is the make of the day, right? But if we're elevating our voice and letting people know, not in my backwoods, right? Guess what? And I'm looking, right? And we all looking, the 20 other of us are looking, things start to change, right? And so what we're encouraging people to do is to, again, get into like-minded, opportunities. We happen to do it through our faith-based organizations, and it's interfaith in our space. So we are not, just a group of Christians. We have Muslims, we have people of the Lukumi tradition, and we even have non-believers, right? And so whoever you are, if you're in the space of social justice and you want to see our city be its best self, come join us.
So let me give you my uncle. He made this transition, but he had this quote. He said, whoever you are, wherever you are, be the very best that you are.
Amen. That's
all
absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Be the best that you are. Yes, it reminds me of King's speech. King had a speech like that as well, right? When you're talking about be the best, if you're the, sanitation sweeper, be the best sweeper you can be, right? Whatever you're doing, do it to your best, right? And do that for your families as well. I don't know anyone that doesn't want the best by their community and their family. And so as we think about that, be your best self, and education and knowledge, right, is key. So if you don't have it, there is somebody in your network that probably does. Tap other people, let people know what you're thinking about. And I'm sure you're going to find others that are going to want to be in the same plight with you.
Wow. Now, how does voting impact jobs in the community?
Well, I don't know if it necessarily impacts jobs per se. However, what I could say in the place of employment, that it does open up some opportunities, right? I have seen for example, some of our elected officials hire from the community, right? Which is a great thing because they have positions within their own sphere. It tends to really, again, connect. What I can talk to is that it connects also to our community boards and what kind of businesses are being given like license to open up, because that too can open up jobs. What, again, in terms of how we use our power, is that we need to leverage that somewhat more, right? Where there's an opportunity to talk to local business. I remember this when Whole Foods, I'm from Harlem, right? And when Whole Foods opened up, and how adamant the community was to make sure they were hiring community folks. Right.
Wow.
Because when it first opened up, it was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It looked like the Whole Foods in another community. Right. But we want to make sure that everyone in our community has the same opportunity that anyone else. And since you're here, right, and you're bringing this big business, multi-million-dollar business here, how about you hire some people that are from this community? So again, this is how, we want to leverage that. And we can also challenge our elected officials when we don't see it happen, right? And so this is how your voice is elevated. I'm a voter. When you say I'm a voter in your community, that means something. They start to straighten up as elected officials because they want to hear what you got to say, right? And believe it or not, they often are doing researches. You could be yelling and screaming, but if you never voted, they're going to know that. That's public record. People can look at your public record and see, right, whether you're voting or not. And so you want to be able to go with authority and say, listen, I'm one of your voters, right? And all these other people here are your constituents. And we like to see more jobs in our community. As you're given licenses and other things, make sure that we are thinking about people in community board 10 or community board 9 or whatever your community board might be, or in my neighborhood, right? So again, your voice is elevated when you exercise that right of voting. So it's more than just the action that you're taking that particular day, but how do you take that action and continue to build on that, right? So you talked about the baby step. The baby step is voting, right? To me, all right? The baby step is going in there and clicking the thing, because, it's not going to take a whole lot of time, right? You're going to go in there, you're going to click the level. Well, now you don't click the level, but you put the ballot into the machine. Everything is automated now. You put the ballot into the machine and somebody's going to give you a sticker and you're going to be really proud of that. Take that selfie, definitely be proud of it. Send it to the others, put it on social media. I voted. Did you? Right? We want to put everything else on. We want to play the food and all that other stuff on social media. How about putting up a picture of you voting, right? This little sticker they give you. Take the selfie, put that out into the universe, right? And say, hey, and challenge your friends, challenge your family members. Have you voted, right? Can you invite 5 other people to do the same, right? And if that 5 then invites their 5 and then another 5, you start to build, again, a rigor where it's showed in terms of how many people will be affected by that. So that's a challenge I've been making to everyone. I've been teasing some of my younger cousins and others. I'm like, stop putting the restaurant food. I want to see the voting sticker. That's what I want to see, right? That's what I want to see, right? And so let's put some things out there in our community that, again, encourages us to be the change that we want to see. I think a lot of us, myself included, there are things we want to see change in our community. And again, we're waiting for somebody else to do it. Oh, they. Who's the they? There is no they. It's us. It's we. It's me. It's you. It's all of us combined, right? So not waiting for anyone else to do it, but the power is in our hands. Let's execute on it.
Well, it's funny because people are turning their back on politics and but from what I'm hearing is there's a lot of opportunity around this thing called politics.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, there's a community of people. Again, I'm coming to you in a nonpartisan way, right? But what I want to say here, there's a community of people that are banking on that level of what I would call ignorance, right? You know, so there are some people sitting around saying, "Yeah, that's right. Don't vote. That's right. Don't you do that? Don't you do dare do it, right? Because then I could do what I want to do in my community because we do vote." Right, you know, so you don't want to be, you know, we want to be we want to be at the table, right? And we don't want to live into somebody else's narrative, right, about what Black and brown people do. So again, I challenge you, right, to turn, you know, and make some folks a little angry. Because again, some people are banking. There are people banking on the fact that you're going to say, you know, not me. I'm not going to do that. So then that lessens our voice in places like Harlem, right? And I don't want to see that.
They vote don't count, Marilyn. They think that their vote don't count.
Well, listen,
they're gonna do what they want to do anyway.
Huh? Yeah, I'm here to tell you, I saw a couple of close elections where, you know, it was less than 100, less than 200 votes that made the difference between somebody winning and losing, right? And that was just in the last election. So your vote does matter. It does count. It is your passport to a lot of the other opportunities in terms of speaking out and to and through some of the issues in our community. And don't let anyone take that away from you. You know, again, I think our forefathers have fought long and hard for a day like this, right? And would be dismayed, I think, you know, and hurt by the fact that we would shun away from what they fought so hard for. So again, don't live into other people's narrative, live into the narrative of our ancestors, which again have been fighting for this for us and honoring them by exercising our right to vote.
And I'm going to send out prayers and blessings to the brother that just lost his life. I think the name of the group was called Amigos. But the reason why I'm saying that because he had a record called "Walk It Like You Talk It," "Walk It Like You Talk It." And so you are walking the walk. Can you tell us how many people you have touched their lives through the baby college?
Oh, you're going to a whole nother part of our life. That's another part.
That's a part of it, though. You touch these people's lives.
Yeah.
And my daughter was one of them.
Thank you. Yes, that's right. I remember her fondly. So yeah. So in addition to the work that I'm doing now in terms of kind of civic engagement, definitely part of the Harlem Children's Zone, great organization, and the Baby College program. And during my tenure, over 6,000 mothers and fathers went through the program. And some of them I still see today. As a matter of fact, there was one young lady who mom went to the program. She's now of age where she's now bringing her own little one, right? So like there's like generations that are happening. So I've retired from that work about 4 years ago. But again, the bug stayed in me in terms of how to do work within my community. And that's why I came into this space where just last year, for example, we were able to touch 125,000 New Yorkers, right? And we did that through text banking, right? Just simply picking up the phone or picking up the text messaging and making sure what I'm saying to you today, we were actually doing that by texting. So we were hitting voters or people that may not come out as often and reminding them, oh, I didn't know it was election day. Well, glad you didn't know, you know, I'm glad that we're here now. We're giving you the information. So again, we've been able to, I've been, again, blessed to be in an organization where we touched over 125,000 New Yorkers last year. We're planning to do the same thing this year. Again, we're looking to really exceed that. And we'll continue to do that year over year because it's so important for us to continue to get the word out to our community.
So I grew up in the projects, and there was a lady that lived in the building. She had a daughter. Her daughter had a son. I grew up. I didn't know him growing up. I was probably gone already, right? So I guess he was getting in trouble, wild, whatever. He got shot. He got blinded.
Oh.
Somehow in that process, he hooked up with the right people and turned his life around. And so I did an interview with him at the radio station, WHCR. I'm going to give a shout out to WHCR.
Yes.
Wonderful work that they're doing there. So I interviewed him, and one of the things he said to me, I will never forget, he said, there are a lot of resources out here that we don't take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
understand
absolutely.
what he was saying?
I do. I do. I do. Yeah, there are definitely opportunities that are out here that we should take advantage of. We should always kind of do our research, our due diligence. Again, getting in the circles of others and even going to, I didn't mention this earlier, but even going and visiting. You asked about baby steps, right? Going and visiting the office of your elected officials. As soon as you go into their office, you're going to be almost bombarded with so much information because they got it all in their office, right? There are pamphlets on this and there's something on that. But I advise you to go visit them, right? And let them know, again, I'm a constituent and I'm interested in whatever that is. I'm looking for new housing. I'm looking for a better school for my daughter or whatever it is, right? And that there are definitely some resources there that are untapped, right? And we may not always know about them. Again, I'm always amazed. If I'm in anyone's office, I'm always kind of looking on the walls, like, what's the brochures? What do they have there? And reading up and trying to get information. And if it doesn't apply to me, then I always try to share it with somebody else. That's the other thing, right? We get information sometimes and we keep it to ourselves. That's not what this is about. And hopefully, again, we're relaying to folks that each one teaches one, right? And so when you get that information, it's your duty to share that with somebody else. Or it might not be applicable to you, but you can definitely, share that with someone else. So yeah. Take advantage of the resources that are out there. Share those resources, with each other. Listen to each other, right? Like we often kind of, hey, how you doing? And we're not really, my new thing is like, how's your heart? Right? That's one of our sayings at Faith in New York. How's your heart? Right? Because going back to what you were saying earlier, that all ties into how you're able to be the social justice warrior that we would like for you to be. Right? If you're not well, then you're not ready for all this. Right? So how's your heart? Right? Not the how you doing, and then we don't really listen for the answer, right? But that we are, again, checking in, and we should do that more than ever, I think, in the times that we're in.
That what you just said is crazy. Social justice warrior. Woo! That's deep. Boy. That is deep.
That's what we all should be striving to be. I think we all got a little bit of that in us. I'm sure someone can relate to something that I've said today, right? That you're going like, yeah, why is that? Like, I remember it very vividly, during COVID. I'm like, where are all the garbage cans? Like, I would go outside and they were like, no garbage cans. I'm like, why is this happening? Right. So I had to like do the research and started going to my elected officials saying, like, listen, I need to see a garbage can. They had a whole rationale of what was happening during the time of COVID. But meanwhile, my community is getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. And now we're, it's like me and the rats are fighting, right? Like we're out there fighting, right? Cleanliness is something that, it's a simple thing. It's a simple thing, but we have to, that goes back to politics, right? Is what I'm saying, right? Is that I have to now challenge my elected officials to put more money in the budget to make sure that there's more sanitation that's happening, or whatever the project is that eradicates, the rodents that are in the community, that's happening, right? Or that again, the school settings are clean. Yes, people are always interested, or maybe not so much interested. I remember I'm laughing to myself because I remember it just happened by a happenstance. I happened to be parking the car, but the custodian for the local school was out and he was like sweeping. I'm like, have you ever thought about canisters for the school? And he's looking at me like, why? Who is she and why is she even asking me this? I'm like, because I live here, right? And when you leave, right, the amount of garbage and the amount of things that happen before that's ever picked up, it's not helping me, not helping our community. Again, I'm from Harlem. We have some of the highest rates, maybe next to the Bronx, in terms of people that are affected by asthma, right? All this garbage is not helping none of that, right? He was like, yeah, you should let the principal know. Guess what I did? I wrote an email to the principal, right? And let the principal know. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, I'm saying that's what I'm talking about when I talk about being a warrior, right? Like you have to be about something, right? We're only in this world for a short period of time. What's going to be your mark, right? What is the thing that you're passionate about? How are you going to leave this place better than you found it, right? And so again, those are the kind of things that I want to, really encourage you to think about. And that's why I do the kind of work that I do. If someone said that there was no paycheck to do it, I would still be doing something related to this, and did do that for many years as a district leader. Right, it was a non-paid position, but again, it was because of my passion for the community that I was able to do that for a period of time. But we all got to eat, right? So you got to balance it all out. But figure out what your passion is what I want to leave with the audience. And hopefully you're acting on that. And whatever way, shape, form that you're doing, it's going to make a difference, right? Because again, it's a place that someone else was not speaking on it yet, right? Or there might be people that already are, and then you can join that group to do that as well. But yeah, the encouragement there is to continue to fight for good
can we have an impact? Can we have an impact on another city? Like you see, I'm wearing a Georgia shirt. I was born in Georgia. I was born in Savannah,
Were you
Georgia.
born in Georgia? I didn't know that.
Savannah,
There's a fight out here going on down in Georgia. There's a fight going on down there,
so,
politically,
I mean,
right?
Can you have an impact on another city?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm gonna reach out to my family and say, hey, make sure you get out there and do your due diligence.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. We definitely want to encourage folks to talk to folks that are out of state, especially in what they call like swing states, like Georgia and cities like Philadelphia, et cetera. That again, we want to make a change. There are opportunities also even locally to join different organizations. They do phone banking to other states. And again, we're doing this in kind of what they call like swing states because you want to be able to impact what's happening, not only in your state, but what's happening across the country so that there's political power built at a federal level.
Wow, this was a wonderful education. I learned a lot. Can you just give us the websites one more time as we give us the websites that we need to look for to find our polls?
Yes. For your polling sites, please go to vote.nyc, and that will give you all the information that you need. You type in your address, and it will take you right into your early voting sites. And again, remember, your early voting sites will differ from your sites on Tuesday. So that's why it's important to make a plan. Figure out, are you voting early or are you voting on election day? When you go to vote.nyc, it will show you both sites, and then you vote with your feet. And I see you at the polls. Look forward to seeing you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marilyn. This is Marilyn Joseph. This was wonderful, very educational, enlightening, and I'm super excited. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for having me. All right.
All right. Thank you.
All righty.
All right. All right. This is Rick Young signing off.